Welcome back, guys. We did go along on this one. This is just the part 2. We didn't want to give you the full rigmarole and everything like that. So let's get right back into the action.
It was a moment of like, I'm like this. You see the fireworks, and I look at the silhouette. I'm like, oh shit, bald head, cape, eyes, the stars. I'm like, this is the Watcher. Yep. And like in my head, I'm like, okay, well, this is all the animation department's all connected, right? With what ifs and whatnot. I'm like, what? It's like, is this a what if situation that we're going to reflect on in another season of What If?
I think it's one of those like. There's a lot of talk online about the moments that the Watcher is there are those moments that cannot change too. Mm-hmm.
The canon
for the main timeline. Yeah. So it's like, and he never shows up at happy moments aside from one or two weddings. I want to say he was there for like the wedding of Sue and Reed or something like that. Yeah. But that's the exception rather than like what you normally see from him. So the fireworks are going off and we go to the gala. And the interesting thing is I've seen people who are referencing the Hellfire Gala at this. And I get it because in the Hellfire Gala, especially the final one that happened in the comics, there was the big tragedy that happened. They specifically never call it that here. And I feel like that is intentional. I don't think they wanted to pull that trigger of what the Hellfire Gala is just yet. I think they wanted to keep the story of the Genoshan massacre, to be honest. So, but at the gala, you know, Magneto enters, and then I give full credit to Eric Voss and the New Rockstars team. They pointed out that at this point, right as Magneto is entering, in the foreground is an older white character with a very specific haircut of white hair that they think looks like Bastion, who we referenced in the last episode.
Oh, wow.
And I completely missed it. I was just doing Easter egg hunting on my prep for this episode tonight. And it makes so much sense if that's the case. But I completely missed it. And if they're right, awesome. All the props to New Rockstars. If they're wrong, it's still an amazing theory considering what's about to happen in about 10 minutes. I love
New Rockstar. I'm a huge fan of New Rockstar.
Yep. People are dancing on top of chandeliers, which I thought was awesome. And kind of one of those, you could only do it with superheroes and mutants. You couldn't do this with regular people because they die.
Right.
Well, things don't go too well. Here either.
That's true. We do get a quick Archangel cameo. I guess at this point he's Angel because he's not under Apocalypse's control. And then for me, like Rod knows this, Cosmo, you probably know this because of like Comic-Con and stuff like that. I love Boom Boom, and she literally appears in like a 80s style Cyndi Lauper dress, in like walking down the stairs super quickly, and then from the fountain that she walks by, this character who I've never heard of before but was very easy to find, Squid Boy is actually his comic book name because fuck naming characters creatively at one point in Marvel, I guess. And you see Maddie and Gambit who are at the bar, she referencing, you know, it's so weird to see how comfortable Rogue and Gambit are with Maddie, knowing she's a clone of Jean, but also knowing like for whatever time period they have a shared memory and experience with her. So they're very comfortable around this character that, again, in the comics is batshit insane.
It is. It's very batshit insane in the comics. But I think for this situation, it's like, well, you know, it ain't our problem.
But but Gambit says, you know, apparently there are others that are more dashing. As he looks over at Magneto, who is talking with Shaw and Emma, Val comes over, is very upset about what the council has effectively announced of Magneto as Chancellor. And Magneto, to your perfect point earlier, Cosmo, is so quick. And if there is ever a leader you want, it's somebody who could be this quick. Because, you know, I hope that the UN would allow Genosha to self-govern the way other nations are allowed to. And she says, well, you know, most other nations don't appoint a terrorist. And then Magneto's line of like...
But you find that most of the leaders are dictators, or how the people will allow the dictators to be governed or something like that. It was so quick.
It was effectively... You won't let them appoint somebody who's a terrorist, but you'll let them act like they are one.
Yeah.
So, and then at that point, Rogue enters. We get another reaction from Val Cooper, going to your guys' theory about, you know, her actually being Mystique. Cosmo, did you recognize the outfit on Rogue?
No, I did not. No.
Sorry, I was only pausing because there's a motorcycle that was going by. So, X-Men number 4, the classic basketball scene that gets referenced a lot in the show, is also the issue where Rogue has her first ever date with Gambit. she is wearing that dress in the issue. It is a slightly more casual version of it, but it is 100% a reference to that dress.
This bitch.
You're referring to Bo because Bo was the one that probably made that decision. No.
This outfit that we went on a first date, you're going to wear here in front of everybody in Genosha?
So at that point, and Rod, I'll let you jump in on this, there's a music cue that I was not expecting in the show.
What, Enya?
No,
yeah, it was Ace of Base's Happy Nation. I remember this song. I mentioned to you last night, I have never thought of this song in a sexual way until now, because it was on the same album as The Sign. I'm going to leave it at that, because I have some other thoughts. I guess if we ever meet in person, we
this
can
is
talk
actual
about
real
it.
song?
Like,
this is not just an actual song. It was the lead single from the album that had The Sign on it.
Yeah,
God.
it was the lead single outside the United States. So I think in the United States we got The Sign first, but Happy Nation was like the rest of the world knew about, and that was pretty much the version they used. I mean, maybe they did some other submixing and stuff.
Because I'm thinking, this is like an Enigma mix.
Nope.
I'm like, this makes total sense for this
Ace
era.
of Base.
No,
And
so
it's not even like sexy Ace of Base. It's like, I guess is 90s sexy, but it's like happy clubbing Ace of Base.
Yeah.
No. Well, if you look at the lyrics to it, there's also some stuff that is not in English at the beginning, and that's where they actually kind of like muted the audio of the vocals as other people are talking about it. And then when they go into, them doing like what I refer to as the hand hug, where, you literally just put your hands like this together kind of scenario right in front of Gambit's face, and then nobody's talking, that's where you start actually getting the lyrics in there. And Gambit leaves when he sees that happen in front of him.
This explains also why I forget if it was in one of the first 3 episodes we watched. I mentioned I think it was on the podcast. If it wasn't, it was in person. But I was like, there's some random Ace of Base song that's playing.
You did mention that on the pod, yeah.
Okay, and I was like, I guess because of the time period that tracks, but like now we're seeing everything before was intentional, so we have to pay more attention to these little deals.
There is a quick wide shot. And in that wide shot, I guarantee you I'm the only one who noticed this from at least our group, because when I do a rewatch, it takes me 90 minutes to get through the show because I'm literally pausing to take notes and stuff, because I do handwritten notes because I'm a psychopath.
I was wondering, are you reading a script from this show?
There is the classic Peter Parker. So the pink shirt, the jacket, the jeans in that shot, he is on an elevated platform to the side. It is, without a doubt in my mind, that is the Peter Parker
from the animated show?
Yeah, from the 94 animated. It's too close to not be a reference, especially because we know in the trailer, Peter's name is referenced on that Daily Bugle. Yeah. So they start dancing. Everybody sees them kissing. Shaw and Emma, they give notice to it. And then Maddie gets her headshot, but her headshot is pink as opposed to blue.
And it has like the echoes of who we'll find out the voice of saying like, stop everything, stop the music.
Yeah,
stop
turn it off, turn off the music. And then we see swaps back and forth where Jean is also getting a nosebleed at that point. I think this is one of those scenarios where, because you can't show things simultaneously, I think this is literally those two things. Both shots happened at the exact same second as each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think someone's trying to reach like one of them and just kind of?
Although Madeline Pryor was the first one, she was the one in Cerebro interrogating Garrick, so she saw that vision.
Right. And that literally jumps into Madeline experiencing the stuff from the Gyrick vision. Mm-hmm. And we also see like these shots of like rats coming up over stuff and everything.
So between that and Apocalypse being in the intro, that's a heavy implication that Apocalypse is responsible for this, right?
I could see it going multiple ways. Yeah. Like I will not dismiss any theory at this point, because I've also learned don't dismiss Rod's theory, because Rod was the first person to ever say to me that Ms. Marvel was going to be a mutant. Motherfucker.
Even before this episode, remember, it wasn't on the podcast, but I think we were just hanging and talking, and I was like, yeah, do you think they're just going to kill everybody?
And I want to say no, but I also can't at this point.
Well, every time there's a flashback of something, like even in the original, somebody's going through and seeing, there's flashbacks of the future and whatnot, like Bishop's Arc and all like that. You see all these mass graves, and then now it all totally makes sense what will happen next that we're going to discuss in Genosha. They're like, it's a mass graveyard.
So Maddie pops up, she has a nosebleed too, and she starts to walk out.
The rats just have a very biblical vibe to it, so.
Yeah. So the kiss ends. Rogue says that she can't do it. She knows that Remy was right and that some things are deeper than skin. Maddie goes outside. Cable runs up, before we get into the deep, dark shit of this episode, is the second to last cameo that pops up here. Marrow, who most people know from Marvel vs. Capcom, is there just as Cable's running into the shot.
Yep.
She's not missing.
I use Marrow so much.
She is not missing. You're right.
Yeah. Marvel vs. Capcom 2, she was a great assist, great aerial assist. In that
See, I would usually do like an Iron Man, Cyclops, and Cable combo because of doing the 3-character like hyper move. Yeah. Just the whole screen is on fire at that point. So
I always use Gambit and Marrow, and then I'll either choose between Hayato or Strider or Wolverine. Nice. One of those to be my leads that I start off with. But then if one of them gets killed, then I'm left with Gambit or Marrow, and I try to use Marrow for last in case I die. In case I go against somebody that's using Storm, Sentinel, and Cable. Hate that. Hated those combos.
That game is so good for like various neurospicy, people, because like it's so overstimulating for me. Like I love Marvel and Capcom, and I can't watch or play that game. But then I went to like a bar arcade with a friend who I won't name specifically, love them to death, but also like one of the most like ADHD people I've ever known in my entire life. And they got on the arcade machine, and it was just like they decoded the Matrix. Yeah. I watched them play that, and I was like, I've never seen you be efficient at your actual like profession. I used to be with this game.
I used to be so good with that, and I had to take more than $1 with me because every time I get to the game center where I grew up early, I could be on the game. Then right before I get to Onslaught or the last person, who depending on which 3 or 2, somebody comes in and challenge. And I'm like, no, and I'm sitting there for like an hour trying to fight all these people because now people are coming into the game center and now they want to play. And then I just like either I try to kick some ass or I just let myself die and move over to Soul Calibur or Tekken Tag.
Right.
But it was just like, God, I just want to get to the game. I haven't beat the game. I haven't beat it. I haven't beat the last guy yet. And somebody always comes in with Cable, the Sentinel, and Storm or Magneto, one of the two. It's just it's a great combo, but it's hard to play against.
So, speaking of Cable, Cable is screaming, get everybody out, turn off the music, everything like that. And then while the fireworks are going off, and they were very specific about their color choices in this, you have pinks, which we've been seeing, blues that you've been seeing, and of course yellow. And then the green explosions happen from the ground. And to my point about the Watcher is like, this is it. This is going to be the best, worst feeling for the next 10 minutes, because I looked at the bar on the screen. I was like, oh my god, we have 10 more minutes of this episode right now.
Yeah, this one was 5 minutes longer than the other ones.
Yep.
And
I mean, just Cable popping up period knows that some shit's gonna go down
while panicking. He's not like taking it easy and being chill. Like he's actually in a legitimate panic at this point.
This is also this is why I'm thinking too, because like Cable's been in the show before, but the time that he comes into the show, it's R. Jean Grey. No connection. As soon as he's a connection with Malin Pryor, the real mother, he has that link.
So there is a tweet that came out from Larry Houston, who is the director of the original series, and he even says when Jean Grey probed Cable's mind and knew that there was a memory of her, Scott, and in Cable's mind, it was actually Maddie in the memory. Larry confirmed that on Twitter.
That's crazy. That is
so they wanted to do the story and just never got to it, essentially. But the groundwork was there.
And now we know who Sandman from, I guess it was Madeline's vision was in the first couple episodes.
So he sees Maddie, runs up to her. Maddie, because of the reference earlier with the brown eyes, realizes that it's him. He can't give enough of a warning, and his computer says, access failure imminent. I'm assuming that means he has to get out of there before he'll be able to not teleport again. Body slides. And like we've talked about this with the powers, but just even the animation choice of how they are showcasing him teleporting, things like that. It's amazing. It looks fantastic. And he's basically saying like, I'm too late. I failed. Not again.
I'm sorry, Mom.
I'm sorry. He slides out. I'm so sorry. And then the explosion goes off. And it is like when King's Landing gets destroyed in Game of Thrones. Like that green glow of just everything getting utterly decimated.
And that was it was a great animated situation at that point. That was a great, I don't even want to call it a cell or however they do animations. I really don't know. But that was just like fucking chef's kiss.
it became like full on anime from that point on.
Yeah.
They did like the stuttering of not just the music and the sound effects. It was like the screen was like stuttering with the pitch black.
Yep.
It was a Rogue, I think.
Yeah, it was Rogue's perspective that we were seeing. Yeah. There's like this red mist that's happening throughout from like dust being kicked up. People are running, people are screaming. She is able to come out from under something that she had landed under. Magneto frees himself, and then you see the Tri-Sentinel head that is blasting. So proper name for this is actually called the Wild Sentinel.
Okay.
Because if we're assuming this is the same from E for Extinction, it was Wild Sentinel there, and the design is so close to it. It can't be anything else in my mind.
Right. And that's like, what, 2 Master Molds heads in the new one, right?
Something like that,
There has been 2 Master Molds.
I was just calling this Godzilla Sentinel because of Gambit.
That's fair.
Yeah, but man, it was giving me Cloverfield vibes of dropping those little Sentinels. Just like the Cloverfield monster did, drop those little parasites thing.
I like how he said like little sentinels, but those are probably like regular sentinels.
Those are regular. But that's how damn big this thing is. Yeah.
It was huge.
So they're starting to regain their composure. Banshee is flying by with Marrow, says to get to the garden, and then they just get killed. Like Banshee, who is a major X-Men character, is just killed off right there.
That's the moment you know, like, there's going to be no chill about this.
Nope.
The Wild Sentinel spots them, is about to blast them. Nightcrawler pops in and turns and ends up taking the blast as he's teleporting. And they do like the whole, like, you know, Nightcrawler maintains the momentum of what's happening. So as they land, Magneto and Rogue are okay-ish, but he literally is like bouncing through while he's still like smoking from getting hit.
Covered in cuts and blood.
Yep. Gambit arrives as Rogue is going there. They're on a rooftop. Rogue wants to check on Nightcrawler, but she's lost her glove, so she can't actually check him to make sure he's alive or not. Gambit reveals Nightcrawler is still alive. And then we see a bunch of characters that it is not crystal clear who is alive and injured or who is dead off of it. But you see Shaw, you see Dazzler, Moira, Squid Boy, which I'm sure everybody is concerned about, and then Callisto with her eye open.
I think she dies at that moment because her pupil just...
When her pupil shrank, that was how I interpreted it as well.
I thought all of them were dead. That's why they showed them like that. And then Callisto, I just think that read for me was she like had that failure as a leader. Realized like she brought she fought so hard for that role, literally twice.
Yeah.
Well, it happens that scene or the shot with her eye pupil shrinking is, as they mention, that Gambit saying, you know, there's this Godzilla Sentinel attacking. We can't get to all the people. The Morlocks are stuck underneath its belly, and that's literally where you see her eye shrink.
Yeah. She's worried.
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah. Nito references promises were made, and this is going back to when he saved the Morlocks from the Friends of Humanity a few episodes, specifically to Leech of you never need to feel scared again. And then there's the zoom out, which is the first time you see the giant, like, bug cockroach Cloverfield form. Yeah.
Ugh, damn.
And this came out before Cloverfield came out, right, Cosmo? The original artwork, it would have been like 2002.
Yeah.
I want to say that was pre-Cloverfield era. So that's where you also see this thing is dropping the regular size Sentinels from it, like they're nothing. Like they are microscopic in comparison.
Exactly.
To this
they look like little tiny action figures. They look like fucking what's the name coming out of Soundwave, like all the cassettes.
Right. I love Soundwave.
I mean too.
There's a Soundwave right above me in the shot, which our audio listeners will not be able to see. You see Val, who is helping people, trying to get them to safety, and then the mutants that are running next to her get shot.
Yeah, vaporized.
And that's the only reason I still hold out the theory that it might not be Mystique, and I'm totally okay with being proven wrong in this, but I feel like if they were right next to her and they got shot, theoretically, she could have been targeted too.
It's true.
But that's not solid. That's just happenstance more than anything else. Yeah. So as she's looking, and maybe that was just the Sentinel is getting ready to take her out from off camera, Magneto throws like probably a van or a truck or something at that, whacks the Sentinel, and he lays out the plan. I'm going to draw its fire. Rogue is going to clear the path. And Gambit is going to get to the Morlocks. And then that's the Akira scene, right? Like, I'm not crazy. That bike scene was literally Akira to me.
But that was like Gambit Unleashed, man. That was the best. We've always seen him in action, but God, this animation style is just freaking beautiful. Doing a 360 on the bike, taking out 4 Sentinels, right?
3 or 4, yeah,
3
easily.
or 4, and then landing back and like doing like the Akira slide.
And I think it goes to 2 things. One, this is TV-14 is its official rating, as opposed to GA, which is the equivalent of what the show would have been. Mm-hmm. But because it's also on Disney, they could push it to the limit of TV-14 with the action sequences. Mm-hmm. Like, I feel like if you were on broadcast, like if this was on whatever the Fox Kids equivalent is today, they would have aired on the side of like, oh, if it's got to be TV-14, it's like the most behaved version of TV-14, you know? Mm-hmm. And I think we're getting action we never could have gotten in the original animated series.
It's almost like MAV or was like it's almost like a Sons of Anarchy episode. I swear to God.
Right? It's damn close. I mean, people literally being vaporized in front of you.
Blood. Lots of blood.
Yep. Nito gets shot by the Wild Sentinel. He has his shield up, and it sends him through a building into the statue of Xavier, which it knocks down, and that literally crushed like a dozen mutants.
And if you notice, he landed right on Xavier's heart. That's where he hit. It was like poetic right there. I'm like, fuck, on the statue.
Yep. And then we get the flashbacks of Magneto's history, and a lot of it is what's going on in Genosha, but they very thoughtfully put people at the barbed wire in a concentration camp in there. He regains his composure. He says, they will be avenged. And then he literally takes the monorail and uses it as a whip against it.
Oh, that was epic. So but still not doing that much damage. It's like, what is this thing made out of?
That's when we know he's doomed, because he's doing the coolest thing.
He's doing the coolest thing that has no effect.
Back to that. But he knocks it out of it. He knocks it out of it. He's about to charge up the weapon and about to shoot Magneto, and he just knocks that out of focus. Which is kind of cool. I'm like, all right, cool. At least he can do that kind of a damage, but not much damage.
Right. Yeah, it's enough to disturb it.
It's like, is he made out of vibranium, adamantium? What is it?
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird because Magneto, of all people, should be able to fight this thing the most.
Yeah. Pick it up, crush it, get in the inside, gut it out. I don't know, something.
Well, it's that whole carbon fiber argument that they used in what was it, Days of Future Past, where they make Sentinels that he can't affect kind of scenario. Yeah. And we know that the UN has that technology that he can't turn their own guns against them.
Exactly. So that's like building the Death Star.
Right. So the Morlocks are hiding. Leech is confident that they're going to be saved and is like, oh, if Callisto can't find us, which we know she's dead, so she's not going to do it, Magneto could do it. And Tommy, which is I think is the first time we've ever heard Tommy as a character talk, is like, well, the X-Men are no friends of the Morlocks. And Leech reminds everybody that Magneto promised they would never need to be scared again. And like the bravery of this kid from that promise just tells you how powerful Magneto's words were to him. You see the red lights of a Sentinel. It detects there are mutants nearby, but then you get the reveal that it is the Sentinel head coming through the window with Gambit on top of it, with the music hit at that time, goes through, lands on it, and then proceeds to toss the cards and blast it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Best. It was the best.
Fantastic.
Gambit doing some cool shit.
Yep. Way too cool.
It's way too cool.
So they start to exit. Magneto gets smashed right in front of them into the side of a car, and they're about to actually get hit with it. Looked like the monorail was getting tossed back at them, and Gambit charges his scarf and uses the connection from his scarf to the monorail to save everybody. But that unfortunately does split them up into 2 groups, essentially. Rogue pops through a Sentinel, goes to Gambit, and then the Sentinel reveals there is an Omega level threat and goes from focusing on Gambit and Rogue to focusing on Magneto. It begins to blast. It doesn't get through the shield. Rogue tries to help, and Gambit realizes that Magneto is trying to help them, to stop them from happening. Magneto literally wraps them in, first just around the waist with a pole, and then builds a shield around them. And then it's hard to say these words out loud, legit, I'm not even trying to be dramatic on it. When Magneto says in German to Leech to not be afraid, that killed me. It broke me the second that happened.
It was like a split second for that.
That was
he waited to like the last moment.
That was the first time I felt like I got sucker punched.
And then the blast happens. It is absolutely decimated, and then it basically the Sentinel says Omega threat.
Neutralized. Yeah. I was like, I stand up out of my chair the first time after feeling like got like sucker punch in the gut, couldn't breathe. I'm like, no way. And I stand up, I'm like, no, what's going on here? And I sat back down, I'm like, all right, cool. And then the next scene.
Right. And it's like he's finally, and like Magneto has finally redeemed himself, like all the stuff with the UN and everything like that. But this was, I'm going to sacrifice myself to help these people. Like it wasn't a question to him anymore. If there were doubts on his motives, this feels like it cleared them up for me, at least.
Yeah, And it was a smart choice to have Leech and the Morlocks with him, because it made it, for me, it made it a sentimental moment. Because if like Magneto dying would have proved a point, but to me at least it wouldn't have been as emotional
if he was by himself.
Yeah, because like he's a villain, so you can't. We literally, like, you know, when we were kids, like we're kind of wanting him to die, right? Like, so
there is a theory. I've seen it from multiple people, so it's not a single source for it, but there is a theory that the shield held and the ground gave out, and that Leech actually at that point stopped Magneto's powers for whatever time they needed to for the Sentinel to not detect him being an Omega level threat. That is the theory as to how Magneto might not be dead.
No, I'm seeing a redo of like X-Men, the original X-Men, with the whole like shit's going down and blah blah blah. Then Cable has to come back, or no, it's Bishop. Bishop is the one that always have to come back and fix things,
right?
So.
And I'm only sharing that just to credit that that's what people are saying, and I felt like it needed to be addressed. But I have a feeling he's not going to stay dead, because he's come back multiple times, and like there's literally a comic that is called The Resurrection of Magneto that is on the racks this week.
Mostly everyone has died, and Cyclops actually died in the comic books, and he came back. When he came back, he was different. He even like scared Wolverine in the comic books. He's like, usually you just ask questions, blah blah blah. He's like, no, we shoot first, and just obliterated the whole room. And it's like, and you just see like a panel of Wolverine's eyes pop out. He's like, what the hell happened here?
So Rogue busts out of the protection that Magneto has made for them, and then they do this amazing shot where like everything is going along the pace of her heartbeat.
I think I forgot to check to see what point it was, but I'm pretty sure like once the massacre started, like there was just like no music.
Probably. Aside from that little music cue with Gambit jumping in with the Sentinel head, I don't remember there being any.
Yeah, it was like purposely just like to make you like pay attention to like all the moments happening.
Well, wasn't that a thing in Inglourious Bastards where like that opening scene has no music under it at all when they're just dealing with the German troops going into the home during the search and stuff like that? Oh. So Rogue begins charging and flying towards the Sentinel. It starts to turn, and then Gambit makes the save by getting on the bike that had been used, charges it, and actually hits Rogue with the bike as the way to save her. And it's a near miss to almost still getting her.
Yeah, it's like a split second. And then as soon as she's knocked out of the way, the beam just comes right in her path. Hits a building in the distance. I'm just like, fuck. Woo! And the Sentinel... Could she have taken it?
I don't think so.
Like, if Magneto can take that blast.
Yeah, because he is Omega and can create a shield. She's just dependent on, like, the Carol Danvers powers, so to speak.
Yeah.
I guess it kind of also implies that she got like blacked out for a second, right? Because the blast hit and the Sentinel was like, you know, turned away.
Yeah. Well, I think it was focusing on what it could take more out in single shots. And when she was still down, it was like, all right, that's a single mutant. I don't have to worry about it. It wasn't until she started charging at it that it changed its mind. And then when she gets knocked out, it's like, all right, cool, I'll move to the next thing, which is a rooftop where Nightcrawler, Boom Boom, and other people. And then the final cameos of the episode.
All right, the writers, right? Wasn't it the guy with the cross on his like gold chain?
So Bo, who is the writer credited to this episode, as well as a bunch of other ones, as well as Jake, who is a supervising producer on the show as well, is the one actually with Bo. So
damn, that's pretty dope. immortalized that way.
Did you see Bo's a host about this episode?
Yeah, let's talk about that
at the end
once we wrap up, because that was such an amazing post.
I had a chance to meet him when Lenore was at Scum and Villainy.
Yeah, he's come back for the other weeks too.
Okay, cool.
So as that's happening, the Sentinel is getting ready to blast this rooftop. Gambit starts to charge in.
I'll take that bet.
And he gets the attention of the Sentinel, who realizes the threat is what's coming at him. Gambit is literally like jumping and going up these rocks and such. And as he's going at it, I can't place the anime that I've seen it before, but you knew that something was going to come and intercept, and he gets it right into the side. And it was just,
strike in the air. He had his bow staff glowing, ready to go rock and roll in on the Sentinel, and then he just gets stuck in the middle of the air because he's just impaled, and he drops his staff behind him.
And as he drops the staff in the talon, for lack of a better term, that is holding him up, it felt like End of Evangelion to me. I don't know if you've ever watched that, Cosmo. But that was like, standing in front of the Ava as it's just somebody being held in the eye. Like, it totally hit me with those vibes. And they say that the threat has been neutralized, and then the smirk happens.
Yeah, the name is Gambit, mon ami. I love that part.
And then the charge up happens, and then you get Remember It, which not only we know was the title of this episode, but that was one of the big moments in the season 2 finale when he was fighting the Nasty Boys and stuff like that. So the explosion takes out everything in the near area, except for the people who were on that rooftop. But
it literally. He wasn't even touching it at that point. He was just still impaled, and then from his body, like, it's connected to him already. So from his body, it glows pink. And then the whole thing gets covered in that, I like to call it Gambit juice. And then he touches it and goes white. He grabs it and turns white, and he just says, "Remember it," and then boom. What a G. What a G.
There were a few discussions I saw of, like, is Gambit really this powerful? The way I interpreted it is that meant that when Gambit was always throwing cards, it was like the equivalent of just like somebody spitting. Like it was just like little bits of energy and stuff like that. And he never truly unleashed. And this was, I'm going to let it all out right now because there's no reason to hold anything back.
It's like Cyclops without the visor.
Yeah. That's a perfect analogy for it.
Because Cyclops can punch through mountains, for crying out loud, with the focus blast, with just like, it's crazy. But in the comic books, Mr. Sinister has put a block on Gambit, his power, because he is an Omega level mutant in the comic books later on when he's like unlocked. He's like white hair, he has like this gray skin, like cosmic, and his eyes are different color.
That would be the Horseman story for him.
Yeah. It's fully potential. Gambit is nothing to mess with, but this is like Superman finally like Spider-Man. Spider-Man holds back his punches.
Right, because he doesn't want to kill somebody.
So that was the same kind of equivalent. It was just beautiful.
Does this make the Gambit, like, is this his like Omega level moment? Like,
I don't know if it technically makes him Omega, because the definition of Omega is not knowing what the upper threshold is. Like, that's actually how it's defined. It has to do with threshold and measuring it. So
I thought he meant like the best of the powers or whatever.
Omega level, it's like, well, Storm and Magneto are like the perfect, like what Storm just did in the first episode with the Sentinels and like turning the sand into glass. That's like something that even Thor can do, Right. And it also infers that she could do more than what was just shown as well. Yep. A mutant whose dominant power is deemed to register or reach an upper limit of that power. That's what Omega level is. I'm just looking up Omega level mutants, and Gambit's in one of them, but he got a corrective lobotomize from Mr. Sinister. Lobotomy. It's weird. Anyways.
And then it cuts to the X-Men who are watching it on the news, and like I don't want this to sound trite or flippant, but it literally reminded me of waking up on the morning of 9/11 and seeing the news reports of that. Like the tension and the silence, and only being broken by the TV reporter's voice and Scott yelling at the screen of like how many people. Like that was all it was ringing for me. It was just like this And I'm sure that other generations have their moments. Like if you were somebody who was listening to the radio as Pearl Harbor had happened and stuff like that, like it just was that moment, you know?
Beast just crying was like it's a rare thing we've seen. We saw it a couple of times with like people close to him. But like, and now it makes sense. Man, once again, there's like this like flipping of things. This entire 97 series, he's been the most like composed one. Right. Even when they were like living in hell and stuff, he was like cracking dad jokes and stuff. Mm-hmm. And he's not composed at all.
And what he says too, it is the perfect dichotomy of this episode because he only says, "Oh my." So he literally says the same thing that happened, you know, a few hours or a day earlier with the stuff with, you know, Trish as that's all happening. Mm-hmm. Like that's his reaction to it is, "Oh my." And it's like, God, the same two words can have such different meaning within a few hours of each other.
Yeah.
Back at Genosha, Nightcrawler, Pixie, Glob, and the Bird Girl are still alive and going to this crater. And Rogue is holding Gambit's body, and tears are falling down her face. Screen is cutting to black halfway through her sentence, and she says, "I can't feel you." And that's how they broke us, man. Like that was it was a very different experience rewatching this in Scum and Villainy, because there were moments from the last episode where there's like cheering and stuff like that. This was just like
I couldn't go.
Yeah, I don't blame you. It was rough, man.
I didn't want to bust out into tears. I haven't watched anything except for like today. I was watching everybody's reaction on that channel, reaction channels that I follow on YouTube, and reliving that because they only cut, you know, what they could show on YouTube, and they got the best parts, of course, on there. I'm just like, God, and seeing everyone else's reaction, I'm like, all right, good, I'm not the only one. Because sometimes I got to reassure myself when they watch old movies that I've seen in the past, but they haven't. I'm like, I reacted this way. Are they going to react that same way? Am I just weird? But everybody, hands down, has been the same, like tears, shocked, holding their breath, sucker punched. It's so emotional. Like I was devastated for like 4 hours in my room, like teared up and whatnot. It was crazy.
Yeah. It's just like on top of like the great writing, like everything was so intentional in it. Like obviously because of like the nature of the thing that happened, like Gambit didn't have half his clothes on, you know, they got singed off or whatever and stuff. And so like to see his like most skin and Rogue's bare arms. And then we were talking about this before, like Lenore needs to win something for this. Like whenever like
her performance was unreal.
Like the voice or animation for Emmys or something, whatever. If anybody out there is like voting for like her, you could just put the audio on and it does, like that's like half the work. Of course, the other half is us like living with these characters and stuff for so long. But I think this episode kind of proves now with Marvel like the winning formula, because this happened in Infinity War, right? The winning formula is the long game is like a long setup. We had like 4 or 5 years of X-Men that we lived with, and then 30 years of like reliving it whenever we wanted. And then that's how we get a moment like this. We couldn't have started with Gambit fresh and had the weight that we had now. Same thing with Infinity War. And then, you know, like whether it be Marvel or any other movie, you know,
well, it's like watching the other animated ones, Evolution and Wolverine and the X-Men. It's like you see Rogue and Gambit, but it's like, we got to do this all over again. How they met and like, you know, like not even flying in these ones except for the Wolverine and the X-Men. I'm just like, what is this? I don't want to go live through this again. We know it's already established. Let's not go through this again. It's like watching a Batman movie. It's like, we got to go through this. Why he became Batman? You know, it's like, speaking of DC, that whole part reminded me of Batman holding Jason Todd in his arms. When Jason Todd just gets obliterated, blown up, beat down by the Joker. I'm just like, or like the death of Superman, Lois holding Superman, you know, in the crater of all things.
Literally in the crater, yeah.
Yeah, it's just heart-wrenching. And then that, you know, like you say, when it blacked out and you just hear Lenore's voice sobbing and, that's when the tears fell. Yeah.
There was a great post in the X-Men animated series Facebook group. Credit to Harvey Bruton III, who is the one who posted it. It's showing Gambit running up to the Wild Sentinel from behind, and he mentions Xavier's last words to Gambit were, "Gambit, how often must the scoundrel prove himself a hero before he believes it himself?"
I remember talking to Leewalt about that.
Such a punch, man.
Oh, just hearing that right now.
It's wild because, I mean, and we were fortunate enough to talk with the Leewalds about that episode in particular. And as choked up as I'm getting right now, that's how we felt as we were talking to the Leewalds about those goodbyes. Like, it was just as hard to have that conversation with them, and, you know, in all the best ways. But it was like some of that shit is just heartbreaking to deal with.
It is.
There was also a tweet that I thought was really, really powerful. Like, that Rod and I had finished watching the episode, and Cosmo, I don't think you had finished yet because you were a few minutes behind us. Miguel Martinez had tweeted, all caps, "This is what you all wanted. Well, this is what good X-Men looks like. It's heartbreaking and unfair." And it's like, it's so true. And it's like, you know, the way I've felt about it is the X-Men, when they're at their best, have little moments of happiness, and then it gets pulled out from under them, and then they have to rebuild on it. And the build to get back there is why these characters are so powerful to me.
My only, and I've talked to John about this, like, it's not even a complaint, but a nitpick, if I had anything, was like, I wish we would have gotten like 1 or 2 more fun episodes before we just like ran train on everyone. Because like, it's like we go from like Storm to like Jean and Madeline to Scott to get like, we had like the first episode was fun, most of the second episode until the Storm part, and then like the only like break we got really was Motendo, and now I'm thinking like they decided after the fact, like, we need to give you guys a break, like, because you're all gonna cry. There needs to be this like fun Jubilee episode, because otherwise like we're just tragedy after tragedy.
That was a great episode too, especially seeing an older Jubilee and new powers. So that was always my grip about Jubilee.
So the only other things that I wanted to go through in this episode, a lot of people were noticing the choice of words of "I can't feel you" is also what Wanda says in WandaVision when she believes that Vision is dead.
Damn, I never put those two together.
I didn't either. I totally credit the internet for spotting that one for me. And then from the comics, and obviously we don't know what the population of Genosha is in this, but in 5%. The comics, it is 16 million dead.
Damn.
Oh, wow.
And that was how much they just decimated, and why Genosha is effectively viewed as an island graveyard in the comics. So
hence all those flashbacks I've seen in Tombstone.
Yeah, exactly. To end this episode on a happier note, and most of you have probably seen this, and if you have not watched the mid-season trailer that Marvel released, and you don't want any spoilers for you, I would actually say tune out right now. We only have a few minutes left. You're not going to miss a ton. But Rod, I am sending you, because Cosmo saw it earlier, the end shot of that trailer.
Oh, interesting. So we're talking about this?
Yep, we're talking about this.
Okay, so
I wonder if that foot is Morph. He's the only one in the yellow suit.
Interesting. I was thinking Rogue's outfit, but yeah, it could be. Yeah.
So we're getting Cap back.
We are getting Cap back.
Oh, interesting. Right? Yeah, I don't know where the show is going at all at any moment.
And I love that. Honestly.
I love that too. I love that too. The first 2 episodes, I'm just like, where are we going?
But and what's even like funnier about it, like, is that you mentioned this last night, Scum and Villainy, they're pulling from like source material.
Yeah.
So they're not news stories. They're still surprising us. Like,
no, the latest story they have pulled from was published in 2001. That was the latest story.
That was wild. Like, I don't know. It's just I'm speechless. Well, what does that mean? Of course, in hindsight, it's going to be like, oh, that makes sense. Cap did this, or, it was going to be this point or whatever. But
I mean, it could be that there is going to be the spin-off into the larger Marvel animated universe. Like that may be what this is leading to.
I only support that if they have just as good as writing, because it's just going to fail if they don't even get half of what the X-Men have done now. Because now we can pretty much say this is a solid series, because we're halfway through with like 10s across the board.
I mean, this one almost being a literal 10.
Yeah, right.
I mean, okay, you got Life and Death coming up next, right? Part 2?
Life, Death, Part 2, yep.
And then you have 2 more after that, right?
No, we have 4 more after that.
4 more after that. Okay.
I forgot the name of episode 7, but I believe it is a reference to Cable and something to do with the light of his eye.
It's called Bright Eyes.
Bright Eyes, yep.
I only remember that because I texted you last night. It's like, our only hope for another, like, not depressing episode is Bright Eyes. Because the season finale is 3 episodes, and it's called Tolerance's Extinction. That can't be feel good. If Remember It ended up being this, what is that going to be?
And I've shared this online, but like I said, I legit thought that Tolerance's Extinction is going to be E for Extinction, and they fast forwarded 5 fucking episodes. So,
do you think we might even get like I don't know, but lack of better words, like a Groundhog's Day situation with Cable for this? Like we're going to see this Genosha thing happen a few different ways.
Probably.
I mean, that could be Bright Eyes.
We could
Bright
get
Eyes
this
could
whole
literally
thing over.
be Cable's episode.
We can get this whole situation over again, but like played out differently. Where Rogue denies it, Emma Frost says like I could be the queen or like person or something else. Like everything could be like changed differently. Same scenario with the Sentinel coming in, fucking things up. But now you got like let's just say the X-Men get there, the rest of the X-Men. Then we get maybe some Avengers or something like that. It could also be a spinoff into a What If too, if they do a 3rd season of What If. Or a 4th season. I don't know. What season are we on?
So there's a 3rd season is confirmed because they showed a trailer for it at the end of season 2.
There you go.
That would be bold if they connected that.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's going to be him trying to save it, and I don't think they saved Genosha in totality. But I do think there is a point post-Watcher moment. Like, I don't think you could go before that, but I do think that there's enough time that something does change and they're able to, I mean, at the very least, save Magneto. I don't know if they save Gambit. I don't know if they can. Like, whatever it ends up being, I hope they do, obviously. The character, I love AJ as his new voice actor and stuff like that. And like some of the posts that have been shared, like Lenore on Facebook literally is like talking about their reactions and stuff like that. It's absolutely wild. So
it's fucking devastating.
But we got Cap, so that's at least a thing to look forward to, as opposed to
I wasn't a fan of Captain America until the movies. I wasn't a fan of anybody in the Avengers. I didn't really care about anybody. I grew up on X-Men and Spider-Man.
I was X-Men, Spider-Man. I will say House of M turned me around on certain Avengers.
Okay,
because the Avengers were the cops.
They were the government regulated team. Yeah,
and the X-Men were like the actual people living through this stuff that didn't get a choice. They were literally born that way. And now some Avengers were born their way, but like most of them like had some choice along the way. Is this a good point to bring up Bo's post?
Yeah, I'm looking at IMDb right now, and like they haven't really they don't post how many episodes the actors are in, just what they've been in recently. Like my buddy Isaac's only been 3, but everybody so far is like 4, like 4 episodes that they're labeling it, categorizing it. I'm like, God damn it, are they updating it every fucking week?
Yeah, they are.
Smart on them, but damn, I want to know if AJ's coming back.
So Bo had posted like the only time he's commented on the show since the show started. If people don't know, he got fired unexpectedly. We still don't know, so we're kind of remaining neutral on that. Why? Yeah. But he posted about this episode basically being, you should just go read his post because it's better than like we could describe it. But essentially, like he says that this episode was both the pitch to Marvel to do this show, but also he said it's just warming up. Like it's not the worst we're gonna see.
Yeah.
And he wanted to reflect like how we felt a safe space in our nostalgia, which I guess was a little bit of Jubilee and Obsessa's conversation of our nostalgia. Like we rewatched the original X-Men to feel safe again, but in reality, when we grow up, we know that there is no safety. I don't know if I want that in my shows. We'll see how this goes. He's like, yeah, and he cited like real life things, like school shootings. He specifically expanded on the Pulse nightclub.
Yep.
So he's like places that are supposed to be safe spaces that just will never be because there's always going to be someone that wants to like target people, and it's like, man, that is almost too real, like to bring that parallel in.
I'll reshare the post after this episode goes live to our Facebook page. I would say on Instagram, but like it's a very text heavy post. It just won't read well on Instagram, honestly. And I want to just be able to pin it to a spot where people can find it. But yeah, it was really thoughtful and heartfelt. But I totally understand why, if this was the pitch to get this show to happen, why it worked instantly.
Yeah. And also credit to whoever the Marvel / Disney exec that like had faith in it, because on paper, like, and maybe this is just me because I'm not a screenwriter or an actor, if someone would have described the events of this episode to me, I'd be like, absolutely not. Without seeing Lenore's performance, the action, the how it panned out. If you're just going to tell me like, well, like Jean and Scott are going to cheat on each other again, Logan's going to do this thing. Like then we're going to.
You never know because like Madam Web got greenlit, so how was that? That was that pitch meeting. We're going to put the Spider Women's in it, but not the Spider Women. Just going to put the actresses.
So sometime in real life we'll have a conversation about that because I have some theories about that one. But this one is it's just like, and then we're gonna kill Gambit. Or like you're gonna kill like the action figure we sell the most of, and like what?
You're gonna bust a Boba Fett here? I mean, come on, dude. I mean, and granted, he's not like Boba Fett, but he is the coolest. There's Nightcrawler, there's the Wolverine, there's a lot of cool X-Men, but like Gambit, that's like. It's like killing off, I don't know, man. It's like going back and killing off a biblical character or something like that,
Well, Gambit was always like...
Unfortunately, they did that often in the Bible.
In Gambit, to me, I always felt like he was like the favorite that wasn't the default. So he wasn't Wolverine.
Yeah.
But he was like the favorite besides that. Because I think like Wolverine is like the kind of the obvious thing. Like, oh, you like X-Men? You like Wolverine? Which was never the case with me, but my brother loved Wolverine.
Yeah, I never loved Wolverine.
But everyone loves Gambit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, on all that note, Cosmoe, for the people for people who are probably hearing this as a part 2, just remind them of where they can find you anywhere online.
You can find me on TikTok at Cosmoe Tayson, where I do all my cosplay TikToks like Gambit, Red Hood, and Ghostbusters. Also, I have a talk show on YouTube called The Cosmoe Show. That's COSMOE, where I interview people in the cosplay community and do amazing things. So if you want to learn photography or modeling or something like that, you can also find me on a podcast called The Delulu Canoe with Dare Taylor, where we just talk about hot topics on certain things. And
So we'll share all those links in the description down below. Rod,
I'm
final closing thoughts?
I'm following you now before I forget, because ask JC, I will forget.
He'll forget while he's editing the episode that you said it. It's fine.
Oh yeah. No, I'm telling you, I just did YouTube, so everybody else should do like while you're listening to this.
Yeah.
Let's go. Yeah, as far as my final thoughts, like I we know the way the show's gone. The next episode goes a little bit differently than you would expect, right? So now we kind of expect the unexpected. So I don't know where it's going to go. I'm going to gauge. I'm going to like it because of how this is. We're not going to get this resolved for 2 weeks now, though, because the next one's clearly going to be Forge and Storm.
Yeah, my only bet is the end of the episode with whatever resolution we get from that story is them finding out about the Genoshan massacre. That is my bet.
That's the other tragedy of this is Storm is not even there. No, like what the hell? Like they did her so dirty so many times in this. Like they took away her powers, then they did that fake out thing with the trees, and now she doesn't even know like one of her closest friends like
is gone.
Martyr. Man, holy shit. Anyway, I'm gonna get upset again.
Yep. If you like what you heard, we'd appreciate a rating on the podcast app of your choosing. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Spotify, YouTube Podcasts, and CastBox. And if you have any thoughts, make sure to drop them into the comments for either the YouTube upload or the official Instagram posts about this episode. We could really use a BetterHelp sponsorship right now because therapy is necessary after this.
So necessary. I made an appointment for my therapist. So I'm like, no, I got to. I can't do it. She's probably gonna be like, it's just a comic book character. Relax.
Right.
Like, you know.
Or it's the other way around, and they also watch the show and they're like, I can't help you.
They quit.
They literally just say yes.